do, because this will be a redundant antigenic memory to 2020 spike. And we know it's coming from these previous cells because the T cells to these epitopes are being activated, and the only way the B cells can be turned on is by T cells. You see, there's no other way. So it's either memory B cells that are enriching specifically to the S1 after transfection, or infection where those B cells and T cells from previous infections are being enriched, which is what you want. Updating the library rather than clearing all the books off the shelf and replacing them with one copy of the same book. Again, cross-reactive T cells in unexposed individuals are cross-reactive to the other coronavirus infections, which means that a coronavirus infection is going to add to your library of immunity, and immunization to a single spike protein could screw that all up. And that's not a scientific term, but it's very true, because you will cause the body to build a huge redundant antigenic memory set to a protein that doesn't really matter that much right now. And how do I know this is true? How do I know that this is true? Because there's evidence from the globe, there's evidence from the entire planet of infections that shows very specifically that somehow or another redundant, highly specific pressure is being placed on the S1 protein. Well, where would you see that? And that's where we are with how far off is the TV at this time. Because this is what the TV tells you about the immunizations and how the immunizations work. And this is where everybody is really confused. Let's listen to this talking head.
Uncertainty has made it woollier and harder to think about how really your life is actually going to change all that much if you're vaccinated, but you're still potentially a risk to any non-vaccinated person. Getting a hold of that information about whether you can get infected once you're vaccinated and potentially pass it to somebody else, that's really important. Well, today the CDC reported new data that shows that under real-world conditions, not just in a lab, not just extrapolating from tiny numbers of test subjects, but looking at thousands of frontline health workers and essential workers who got vaccinated and who have since been doing their jobs and living in the real world, not only are the vaccines for those folks, thousands of them, keeping those people from getting sick from COVID themselves, those vaccines are also highly effective at preventing those people from getting infected, even with non-symptomatic infection. And if you are not infected, you can't give it to anybody else. And I know this sounds like an incremental piece of news, but sit on this for a second enough to absorb what this means, right? What this means is that we can get there with vaccines. We can end this thing. It means that instead of the vaccine being able, instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them, but not all of them. And the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it. And then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were, right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way, now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Now, what's dangerous about this immunomythology that this talking head is spreading? What's dangerous about this immunomythology is that non-sterilizing immunizations versus sterilizing immunizations have drastically different consequences across populations, and we've known this for many years because of livestock and veterinary medicine. We know that the widespread application of a non-sterilizing immunization can result in the enrichment for viral virulence, i.e., the virus tends to get worse if you don't block transmission of infection, but you just block symptoms. And there are a couple very good examples of where this has happened before. And again, I just want to stress that at no time did she mention the role of vitamin D. She's never mentioned it. She's never talked about selenium or anything, even though veterinarians have been begging me for months to talk about it, because we supplement actually every animal in America with selenium, and we supplement them because this makes such a difference in their immune response. So that's just one small piece of the puzzle.